I wish I were on yonder hill, 'tis there I'd sit and cry my fill, and every tear would turn a mill. Iskejet to a fornin shlon. Shola, 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 room. Shulga saker agus shulga kyun. Shulga darasa agus elil.
Well, how am I feeling about tonight's House of Lords meeting? I'm not sure really. I mean, this place, this Big Ben staring down on us. It's kind of the seat of empire. It's the mother of all parliaments, but at the same time, it's one of the bloodiest loci of imperial power on earth. And there's always a sense of collusion when you come into this place.
I'll sell my rock, I'll sell my reel, I'll sell my only spinning wheel.
Slightly nervous. I'm a bit nervous about who's going to come. They said that there's some guy from the Muslim News who's going to be there, and I'd be most anxious about that actually.
Shulga saker agus shulga kyun. Shulga darasa agus elil yom. Iskejet to a fornin shlon.
Well, I guess my earliest experiences of interfaith was simply the reality of growing up from an immigrant family, growing up as a second generation person in this country, in relationship with people of a variety of different faiths and backgrounds. My childhood friends that I've known since I was 6 years old, and every single one of those childhood friends, the lads, they're all Christian or Jewish, and there's not a single one of them who's Muslim.
A friend of ours, Muhammad, he took a case to Diamond. He got a legal opinion on what was going on, and as a publicly funded body you can't discriminate against someone for their religion. So Muhammad invited us along to the House of Lords.
A couple of months ago, a man called Chowdhury Muinuddin was convicted for his role in the murder of innocent lives during Bangladesh's 1971 liberation war.
Today we have gathered here to protest against the recent persecution against the minority community in Bangladesh.
We are here today against of humanity, or people are getting killed in Bangladesh.
This is the Islamic fundamentalism in Bangladesh. The defeated force in 71, they are reorganizing and orchestrating these atrocities in 2013 and 14.
The innocent people and my sisters are getting raped, and my mothers are living under the sky. My fathers are crying on the street. They have no food, they have nowhere to live, and the children are hiding under the bed.
They are the force united against the secularism, Jamaat, BNP, and the so-called Islamic fundamentalism.
Now, Chowdhury Muinuddin here in Britain is considered the prime example of a moderate Muslim leader.
During the war in 1971, the Pakistani military had carried out one of the most intense genocide since the Second World War.
He's often involved in very charitable events. He's happy, many politicians were happy to stand next to him and proclaim him the voice of British Islam.
After the Bangladesh War, many of them fled Bangladesh to avoid justice. Chowdhury Muinuddin, who recently was found guilty by a Bangladesh war crimes tribunal for abduction and killing of at least 17 intellectuals.
Most importantly, he was involved in interfaith events. Now, how is it that a man responsible for the murder of innocent lives can involve himself or can be chosen as a suitable interfaith partner?
And there's a real risk in the way that interfaith dialogue has developed and become elaborated in this country, a real risk of the desecration of everything that is sacred about human relationship into a culture of politics, of manipulation and of self-serving and self-seeking.
The answer is that the interfaith industry is institutionally problematic. It's a monetised, politicised network of groups that seek only to reinforce and entrench Islamist organisations as representative of British Islam.
But I think there has been a real problem in Britain in recent years when the whole sort of concept of multiculturalism and maybe political correctness associated with that has led to, I think, quite a serious taboo on raising certain issues which are fundamental and which are reflected in real human suffering.
At a national level, interfaith work can be inhibited because of some of the complexities around national faith communities and who they are to represent. And as a result, one is always running into political issues.
I'm thinking, for example, now getting perhaps a little bit more controversial, of situations in which I've been deeply worried over the growth of Sharia courts or Sharia councils in this country. We have at least 85, and of course they have systematic gender discrimination inherent in the way they interpret and apply Sharia law, and women are really suffering.
Government didn't give them any protection, and they went out to give their vote. After they came back, they destroyed their houses, and they raped their wives in front of their father-in-laws and mother-in-laws in the front of their children and in front of their husband.
I therefore have my private member's bill, which tries to address the issue of gender discrimination, may I say religiously sanctioned gender discrimination in the UK. It might apply, of course, to other faith traditions, such as the extremely conservative end of the Hasidic tradition of the Jewish community.
Relations between Jews and Christians often becomes entangled with the politics of Israel-Palestine.
Wales should they take over the world, but that's for next time. So tonight I'm going to just briefly welcome you. I look sometimes at the actions of the government of Israel and I'm quite worried about them, but I'm not the only one. So Sam, thank you for introducing me. I'm delighted to be here.
Obviously we don't have an official line on Jerusalem, indeed we have no influence on any events in the Middle East.
If you like, sort of native Judeophobia, which is religiously motivated and you know there's source material for it, has to be said, within our oral tradition and so on, being combined now with Western anti-Semitism, from the protocols through to Nazi discourse, Holocaust denial. Many ordinary Muslim families, professional middle-class families in the Arab-speaking world, in fact here in the UK, would never want their sons to join militiat or terrorist organisations. It's beneath them. They want their sons to be doctors or lawyers and to have a good life. Nonetheless, round the family table, there's just ordinary, everyday, mundane, Jew-hating talk.
Could I ask the ladies and gentlemen sitting around the table if they have any idea of how Jerusalem could be shared without being redivided?
It makes it very clear that through our classical commentaries that the land was written for the Banu Israel at the time. We have many similarities as Jews and Muslims. We have the same kind of neurotic connection to our mothers. We have the same kind of attachment to scripture. We all get forced to go to medical school. There has never been any kind of heavenly eviction order of care and love, in fact, for the stranger, because you too were strangers in the land of Egypt. In relation to the religious interface between our two traditions, there's every scope for a recognition of the relationship between the children of Israel, between the Jewish people and the land, and likewise a reciprocal understanding from a deep respect and coming from a deep place within Jewish scripture and oral tradition of the duty of care for all who live in the land.
I'm very thrilled and honored and so delighted to listen to you and your talk of peace and friendship, and I must honor you for that. You're obviously a very brave man.
Well, like a lot of meetings, it kind of leaves me with mixed feelings. I mean, some of the things I said I thought I got across well. Other things I fluffed.
And I have to say I kind of felt a certain initial strong sense of suspicion, actually. And you know, I mean, I guess a lot of Jewish people who have never encountered a Muslim imam are likely to feel a sense of wariness, that on the one hand they either might get kind of full-on sort of anti-Semitic or anti-Israel delegitimizing discourse. So I kind of sensed that wariness, certainly. And there was this one guy who kind of said, "Why do you want to divide the city? Why do you want to divide Jerusalem?" And I don't say that, you know, but nonetheless, you know, kind of immediately came with all his presuppositions about what my position is or might be.
And when you try to raise this issue in the political arena, there tends to be a response at the highest level that one mustn't upset the leaders of other faith communities. No, that would be sensitive. That would be interfering in their affairs.
I don't think there is actually a human right not to be offended.
Well, forgive me. I don't think that any sort of subcultural or religious tenets which violate the fundamental principles of this land of promoting gender equality and of the fundamental principle of one rule for all should be allowed to take precedence.
We see this most vividly in the kind of Faustian pacts that are made by interfaith organisations and by major faith groups, both with the powers that be, the powers of government, and also with other actors, both in this country and overseas, that happen to have vast amounts of money or be able to deliver power of one sort or another.
Western states have no legitimacy in terms of interfering in, if you like, the tenets of Islam. It's not. But there is a role for the West in this to help those who represent the, if you like, the moderate vision, the moderate religion of peace aspect of Islam that is so also strongly represented in the literature and the liturgy, bringing that forward, helping people have a global stage to make that case. We're not looking to intervene in religious questions. That's for Muslims to discuss among themselves. But we can certainly say that, you know, this is the sort of Islam we like and this is the sort of Islam we do not like.
In fact, we came across multiple examples of interfaith officials with the collusion, even in one occasion, of a government official, excluding smaller Muslim groups in order to placate the larger Islamist-dominated groups. Now, how is it that we can call ourselves interfaith activists, that we can devote our time purportedly to improving the relations between religious communities and yet exclude some religious groups for fear of upsetting others?
Now, ayahuasca is a visionary brew. It's been used in the rainforest for many generations for healing. And what Mestre Uneo did was he took that sacrament, took that brew and brought it into a Christian format. Or a ritual involves opening with a prayer, drinking this brew, and then singing straight. We never really made much of an effort to impose ourselves on general society. But what we would like to be able to do is practice our religion. Now, we can't do that because we don't have any brew in the country, and that's because the government won't let us import it.
And so, while on the one hand you don't want sort of state-placed religious leaders who do what the state wants, neither do you want religious leaders who will try and, if you like, undermine the state with what they're seeking to do, or simply oppose the state. That can't work either. We all have to work together in terms of conducting and getting a better society. That only works if we can understand this very careful compromise that has to be reached.
So the interfaith network that's existed for a number of years now started off with its 9 constituent religious communities, and there's been pressure over a number of years for other communities to be kind of given permission to join that, and the pagan traditions have been asking for a while to be admitted to the interfaith network, and there's been difficulty in trying to make sense of who the interfaith network is for. And that's just a kind of symptom of how difficult it is for existing structures to widen their conversation, and but not only who to be involved, but what can be part of the conversation.
Having been underground for decades, in fact, in England, an opportunity arose for us to get involved with Interfaith. And that was when the Druids had been trying to join the Interfaith network. I think they've been trying to do it for 20 years.
80% of the IFN's budget comes from the taxpayer. It is, to all intents and purposes, an extension of a government programme from the Department of Communities and Local Government to promote religious cohesion, interreligious harmony. Now, the Interfaith network has a lot of people who have dedicated their lives, ostensibly, to improving relations between religious groups. How is it that these people are working with extremists, such as the East London Mosque, such as the Islamic Foundation, such as the Markfield Institute, groups connected to the Muslim Brotherhood, a global terrorist organisation, and Jamaat al-Islami, a Bangladeshi Islamist organisation responsible for the murder of thousands, if not tens of thousands?
Andrew Shanks distinguishes between truth as correctness and truth as openness, and that what any group is tempted to seek after is truth as correctness, that kind of an impatient pursuit of a narrowing down of what truth is all about. And it's certainly arguable that interreligious dialogue has its own correctness too, things that it works towards, whereas Shanks argues that what religion at its best, as we see illustrated not least in the life and ministry of Jesus, is truth as openness, something that is such an earthquake to how we tend to operate that we're shaken by it.
Relationship, which interfaith people bang on about all the time, relationship, building relationship, that seemed very much more political and politically motivated and self-serving.
Truth as openness is about God's grace, which is an hospitality and empathy that opens us up to receive and engage with the very otherness of the other.
And I see this mirrored on a macro scale in the art of interfaith as the skill of saying nice things we don't really mean to people we don't really like.
So truth as openness is terrifying and prophetic, but part of what religion at its best ought to be about.
If you want to understand part of the problem behind all of this is the Church of England as the church by law established, which has never really come into an understanding of its imperial past.
And other churches sometimes kind of pick up on that and become part of it, but the presumption is very much that it's Anglicans that take the lead.
So, for example, we had a meeting of rabbis and imams in the House of Lords in 2010, which came under enormous pressure. Now, it's just a Jewish Muslim meeting, nothing to do with Anglicans. And yet it came under enormous pressure from Canon Wilkinson and other actors, because he felt as an Anglican he had some entitlement to put pressure on rabbis, including senior Jewish rabbinical academic colleagues of mine, in regard to a meeting between Muslim and Jewish ministers of religion. Being on the outside of institutions, you do tend to acquire a bit of a rebellious voice, and sometimes that voice, I know in myself, can become quite shrill, and I know I can be very rude, and I ask God's forgiveness for the times I've been incredibly intemperate and tough with senior religious leaders. But at the same time, I am worried about the extent to which sovereignty that I feel ought to belong to God is throughout the length and breadth of the Muslim community and in other faiths frequently taken away by people who purport to speak in God's name as their political representatives, and I think that's wrong. And I just think it's wrong.